Hi, my name is Rowena, and the story I'm about to tell you is going to start out with a lot of cruelty and sadness, but there's hope. And my hope is that you will see the goodness of God and come to understand the value of life for those who are conceived in rape and incest. For as long as I can remember, I was abused, and it continued till I was 17. The first part of my abuse, my early years, was in the home of my mom's parents. And it went on from my earliest memory. When I was 10, we left my mom's parents' home. And we were in fear for our lives because her father was very, very abusive. And when we finally settled in Plainview, Texas, we went through the process of trying to prosecute her father, and during that time, she chose to let me know how I was conceived and why the dynamics of my family were so complicated. You see, when I was little, I was raised that she was my sister and that her parents were my parents and that her siblings were my siblings. And when I was 4, she told me she was my mama. I actually didn't believe her and ran out of the tub and grabbed a towel to ask if this was true. And so for those next 5 to 6 years, I was kind of confused because she was my mom, but yet she was my sister. But ultimately, she was my best friend. She spent time with me. I would cuddle up into the bed with her and ask her, can I sleep with you for old time's sake? And I didn't know this at the time, but she really was fighting for my life. So coming back to the point of finding out who my father was, she sat me down and she told me that her father had raped and abused her, and that she became pregnant, and that he was actually my real father, my biological father. And I didn't really know what to do with that. I felt ashamed. I felt dirty. I felt like an oddball. I felt like it was written on my forehead that I was conceived in incest. And so, when I started to encounter the most severe of my abuse, I went through different periods of struggling with who my father really was. And so at one point I was like, well, it's easier to say he's my grandfather, and I tried it out and it didn't work. And then I went through a period where I thought, well, forget that, this man's a jerk, he's dead, just let him be dead and I don't have to deal with it. And the Lord didn't let that work. And to let you know, I've been a Christian since I was 5. So this whole time, Jesus has been with me, and he has sustained me through all of this horrible, horrible abuse that I've had to live with. And so when I was about 16, I finally came to the place of saying, okay, this man really is my father, and he should be my grandfather, but he's my father, and okay, so wait a minute, where does that put me in my family? Where do I fit in? And that struggle I struggled with for many years. And when I was 16, after I came to that place, I was being abused by my stepfather, and I knew what was happening was wrong, and I wanted out, but I didn't know what to do. And I had a vision from God. And in that vision, he showed me a picture of him holding me in the palm of his hand at the moment that I was conceived. And he told me, I'm your father. You don't need an earthly father. You don't need to strive for that. I'm your father. Let me love you. And he quoted Psalm 139, and he told me that he had knitted me together in my mother's womb, and that he knew the number of days I was going to live, and that in him I had a destiny. And that was a life changer for me. And through my story, I got out of the abuse, and as I've moved on in my life, I've shared my story many times, but I realized that I had a treasure. I had a treasure because while many other people who were conceived the way I was were adopted out, and I thank God that their moms were able to make that priceless choice. God had chosen for me to stay in this dysfunctional, horrible family, and yet He had a plan and a destiny for me. And here I am, sitting here, recording my story, letting you know the goodness of God, and letting you know the life is precious. And for every mom for every woman who is raped, whether by a stranger, a friend, or a family member, including her father, the life that could come from that is very precious. And God has a destiny for each life. He has a purpose. And while it may not be peachy keen, because mine definitely wasn't, He has His hand of goodness in it. And we shouldn't be considered the enemy when a woman finds out that she is pregnant. We should be considered a blessing. If my mom had chosen to have an abortion, I wouldn't have the family I have today. I have a husband who I've been married to for 15 years, 5 years. No, 15 years. I've known him for 17. And I have 2 beautiful children who are miracles because I was told I couldn't have kids from my conception, from my genetics. And yet I have a son and a daughter. Today, my family, my mom, has 3 children from her ex-husband. And while sometimes it can be bumpy and rocky and we've had our share of differences and fights and feuds, we all love Jesus, we all serve Jesus, and we all get to share in the beautiful testimony of who God is. And so I want you to walk away from this knowing that no matter how a child's conceived, whether through a loving relationship or a one-night stand or being raped or being a victim of incest, the life that is formed by God, and it has a value. Thank you.